It's time we go to the depths of hell itself.
Where do your loyalties lie? Are they with a nation or with an individual? Are they based on your own beliefs, or are those feelings just a product of the times, of shifting political alignments that only exist in the now? To a soldier, the answer is simple. You're loyal to whatever politicians are above you, and you're used to advance their interests. Ideally, those interests are the same interests of your country's people, but that's not always the case, especially not in the world of Metal Gear Solid. These ideas of corruption and loyalty as a soldier are all explored through the boss, the woman seen as the greatest soldier alive, who suddenly defects to Russia during the Cold War without any justification.
Snake, try to remember some of the basics of CQC.
The boss first appears to the player as a codec contact during the Virtuous mission at the beginning of Metal Gear Solid 3. Her role was to support Naked Snake as he extracted a defecting scientist named Sokolov from Russia. Snake and the boss have a relationship with one another that goes beyond that of a normal man and woman. They knew each other for many years and worked together many times in the past. She was his mentor, the woman who trained him into the skilled soldier he was, but also like a mother in his eyes. They share an inseparable bond with one another as soldiers, despite not seeing each other for many years at this point. She claims to be talking to you from a submarine in the Arctic Ocean, but suddenly in the middle of your mission, she appears right before you, carrying 2 Davy Crockett nuclear missile launchers. She reveals she's defecting to Russia, but without giving any justification as to why. Those 2 launchers are gifts for the man she's now partnering with, Colonel Volgin, a walking lightning rod and the same man Sokolov is trying to escape Russia to get away from. This man is attempting to seize control of the Soviet Union from the current establishment with a small army he commands in secret. With his vast supply of wealth, he's funding the completion of an experimental nuclear missile-equipped tank called the Shagohod, a creation of Sokolov's own design. The Shagohod began development at the request of the Russian government, but Volgin has stolen its prototype and wants Sokolov to finish it for his own intentions. Of course, he can't let one of his assets get away, and with his new alliance with the boss, Sokolov is captured, and the forces at his disposal are expanded. The boss isn't joining Volgin alone, she brings with her the other 5 members of the Cobra unit which she was a part of in World War II. These grizzled veterans are still as skilled as ever and possess powers that go beyond the boundaries of reality, each named after the emotion they chose to take with them into battle. The Fear, whose acrobatics and stealth camo make him a deadly opponent in the forest. The Pain, whose body is filled with hornets he can control with his mind. The End, a killer sniper who's lived for over 100 years through his body's unique photosynthetic properties. The Fury, a Russian cosmonaut whose heart and mind were consumed in flames after witnessing the planet ablaze upon his re-entry from space. And the Sorrow, a medium for spirits who died years earlier but lives on as a phantom himself. They're all fiercely loyal to their leader, the boss, known previously as the Joy for the pleasure she felt while fighting. By proxy, Volgin now has these deadly soldiers under his command, as well as his own skilled men such as Revolver Ocelot. But why exactly is this all happening? The boss is the embodiment of the ideal soldier, loyal and capable for decades, and the woman considered to be the mother of special forces. What could have caused her to become so disillusioned with her country that she would defect to Russia and join forces with such a monster? A man whose goal it is to create an arsenal of nuclear-equipped tanks to proliferate all over Russia and establish the country's dominance over the world. She gives no reason, only telling Snake that he can't join her, something he might have even considered if she offered it to him. He was that loyal to her and idolized her that much. Instead, she dislocates his arm and throws him into the river below. As he falls, he takes with him her headband, something he'll continue to wear throughout the game as a symbol of his determination to get answers for why she betrayed him. With that, Volgin can now play with the new toys the boss brought him. And what better target than Sokolov's previous research and development facility, which he won't be needing anymore.
Even if they are our enemies, they're still our countrymen.
But it won't be me that pulled the trigger.
Volgin nukes his own fellow Russians with an American-made weapon given to him by an American defector. This sparks an international incident with the world believing the boss was the one who launched the nuke herself. To clear the US government's name of any involvement in this event, Snake is sent back into Russia in a mission designated Operation Snake Eater. His new mission was to eliminate the nuclear threat of the Shagohod as well as the Cobra unit, including the boss herself. This is a difficult mission for him, which really tests his sense of loyalty. His country is ordering him to kill the most important person to him, but to reject these orders would be to reject what being a soldier is. Which is more important to him, his loyalty to a person or loyalty to his country? Not only that, but even if he wanted to kill the boss, she completely outmatches him in every way, as seen in the countless scenes of her schooling people. Her skills are unmatched, even taking Volgin to the ground during a heated moment. You can tell he's intimidated by her skill, but respects her and is happy she's on his side. She acts like the mother of the group and making sure everyone stays on track and taking away their toys when they misbehave. She's the calm, calculating one to offset Volgin's violent sadism and Ocelot's sly mischievousness. She has this untouchability to her, and everyone knows it, so no one messes with her. Snake knows this more than anyone, yet he's the one who has to step up to take her down. Throughout the game, he's faced with incredible challenges and forced to overcome them. He has to fight through breaking countless bones, being shot, poisoned, burned, and even tortured. He even loses an eye and is forced to adapt to fighting with no depth perception. Despite all odds, his skills as a soldier grow more and more, and he's able to overcome even greater obstacles. All of this leads up to the moment he attempts to destroy the Shagohod for good by placing explosives all over the machine. Unfortunately, he's caught, but before Volgin kills him, he explains how he gained so much wealth that he was able to fund the Shagohod's completed development all by himself. He reveals the existence of an organization known as the Philosophers. This was a secret group founded after World War I by the wealthiest and most powerful people in the US, Russia, and China, with the aim to influence global affairs for decades to come. These original members were known as the Wiseman's Committee, and their goal was to prevent needless and bloody conflict around the world. During World War II, they pooled together their wealth to create a fund of $100 billion, ensuring the destruction of the Axis powers. This vast sum of money was called the Philosopher's Legacy, and they all agreed to divide it back amongst themselves after the war was over. But in the confusion that followed the war's end, Volgin's father, who was a money launderer for the organization, took the opportunity to steal the legacy for himself, funneling it through various bank accounts all over the world. Those transactions were tracked on a microfilm that eventually landed in Volgin's hands. He's the single inheritor of the $100 billion fund that the Philosophers pulled together, and only he knows how to get to it with the microfilm in his possession. And just for reference, this fund would have been over $1 trillion by today's standards. He chooses to give it to the boss for safekeeping, showing that he has a huge amount of trust in her, but also that he doesn't believe there's any chance he'll lose against Snake. After an intense hand-to-hand fight, an exciting chase, and a final showdown, he's eventually defeated, leaving the boss as the sole owner of his legacy. With the Shagohod and the 5 Cobras also defeated, Snake can finally escape from Russian territory, but not without first tying up one last loose end. He meets the boss one final time in a field covered in white flowers, right as she launches the second Davy Crockett, nuking and completely destroying Volgin's base.
Life's end. Isn't it beautiful? It's almost tragic. When life ends, it gives off a final lingering aroma. Light is but a farewell gift from the darkness to those on their way to die.
Now she has the legacy, and all of the evidence of any of this happening has been wiped out. Was this her plan all along? To betray Volgin by stealing the legacy for herself? Of course, it's not that simple. You really don't know much about the boss up to this point, but knowing this could be her final moment, she uses the opportunity to get things off her chest. She shares with Snake her life story. Back during World War II, the boss took part in the invasion of Normandy while she was late into pregnancy. She was just that much of an asset to the United States. She was shot in the chest, and there, through a C-section, she gave birth to a healthy baby boy, leaving a large snake-like scar across her chest. That boy was in fact Ocelot, and his father was the Sorrow, but unfortunately Ocelot was taken from her by the Philosophers. Now a mother without her child, she drifted from one secret government project to the next. She was exposed to radiation during atomic testing in the Nevada desert in 1951, the same way Snake was during the nuclear test detonations on Bikini Atoll in 1954. They were drawn together by their shared past, both fated to die early due to their exposure to mankind's most destructive creation. Shortly after, the boss was chosen to take part in the Mercury project and become the first American in space. Anyone sent up in the primitive spacecrafts of the time would be exposed to radiation from the sun. That's why the boss was chosen, since she had already been irradiated once before. There, high above the atmosphere, she got to see Earth in all of its beauty. Her whole life had been about war and conflict between nations of people, yet up there, she got away from all of the petty squabbling and saw the world united as one entity on one planet, not one divided by imaginary borders and politics. That became the world she wanted to see realized. Instead, she was betrayed by her leaders in 1961 after being sent to Cuba during the Bay of Pigs invasion. If you didn't know, this was a CIA-sponsored invasion of Cuba utilizing exiled Cuban nationals living in Florida. They trained up around 1,400 of them into a paramilitary force and sent them into Cuba to overthrow the newly established communist government. According to the boss, the president at the time refused to send in air support for her and the paramilitaries, so they were annihilated by the Cubans. She was forced to watch as these men were sent by her country to die and be killed by soldiers from their homeland, truly putting into perspective how the times can turn your own allies against you and how you can be taken advantage of by others. Because of the botched operation, she was sent underground. This is when she was contacted by the philosophers who ordered her to kill the Sorrow, who was her lover, friend, and former partner, driven apart from her by the times. In World War II, their countries were allies, but now they were facing each other as enemies just because of political alignments. She was forced to kill the father of her child just 2 years prior to Operation Snake Eater. This shapeless, faceless organization known as the Philosophers is actually a fractured shadow of its former self. They began with good intentions, but with the eventual deaths of their founding members in the 1930s, the organization began to grow corrupt. The Philosophers' original philosophy of peace became one of war as new members were brought in to replace the original ones. Now they have no sense of right or wrong and instead exist to cause a string of conflicts that chain together perpetually into the future. They became war itself, orchestrating and profiting off of conflict all over the world. This was all told to the boss by her father, one of, if not the last original members of the Philosophers' Wiseman's Committee, who was killed by the new establishment for spilling their secrets. In reality, this Cold War is the result of the Philosophers feuding amongst themselves. Driven by greed and a desire for power, each country's branch of the Philosophers wanted the legacy for themselves. That's when it was stolen from them by Volgan's father. Now the different divisions of China, and more specifically the US and Russia, are in fierce competition to recover the legacy and secure global power for their own country alone. The boss is one of the only people in the world who knows the true intentions of the corrupted Philosophers. They killed her father and put her through so much suffering throughout her life, and now she stands before you with their legacy in her hands. She now possesses a near limitless fund of money, something that could ensure world domination for anyone who had it. This is the very thing the world is falling apart to obtain. You'd expect this to be the beginning of a solidist tier motivation based on revolting and eliminating the corrupt establishment running the world. Did she defect intentionally to obtain the legacy for herself so that she could use it to free the world from the corrupted influences of the Philosophers? It's actually far from that.
Why are you doing this?
Why? To make the world one again.
Everything the boss has done during the Virtuous mission and Operation Snake Eater has been the result of an order by the US Philosophers. She was tasked with faking her defection and allying herself with Volgan in order to obtain the legacy and bring it back for the US. It was a simple plan that would have been over much earlier had things not gone awry. She was given 2 Davy Crockett's to gain Volgan's trust, but they hadn't anticipated that he was crazy enough to launch one of them on Soviet territory. The resulting political uproar forced the US to make a deal with Russia to have Snake kill the boss in order to clear the US's name. Right here, right now, she's ordered to die. Her mission is to let herself be killed by her protege, the man she trained for years and who was like the son she never got to have. All to cover up the actions of a shadowy group that has caused her nothing but trouble. All just to get them back their money so that they can resecure their control over the world. And defying all expectations, she's completely willing to go through with it. The boss is a loyal soldier until the very end, and she plans to fulfill this mission just like any other. And she's so willing to go through with it because she believes it's for a good cause. When she saw the world united from space, she decided to dedicate herself to achieving such a future, free of warring superpowers whose conflicts were sparked by backdoor politics. During World War II, the Philosophers, regardless of how corrupt, were still acting as one entity. China, the US, and Russia were united under the Philosophers, together using war as a means of profit to advance their nations. With her sacrifice, she hopes to end the Cold War and reunite the Philosophers as one. She wishes to re-establish the status quo from back during World War II, when they were united under a common goal of defeating the Axis powers. Though even during that time, war was at least partially a result of their organization's actions, and sparking an everlasting chain of wars was their goal. This is what the boss is happy to die to continue, so while she wants to see peace between nations, the result of her death isn't going to be as idyllic as we would all hope for. Regardless of whether it'll result in the perfect world or not, the boss is loyal enough that when her country tells her she needs to die for the greater good, she accepts that order without hesitation, for the betterment of her country and the world. In this way, she sort of forms the counterweight of Solidus Snake as a character. While Solidus identified a corrupt, manipulating government and sought to free the world from it, the boss is willing to be used by the same type of government because she trusts in their judgment. She's a soldier, and her role is to follow orders and get things done, and she'll do that until the very end. And that's Snake's role as well, to finish his mission. Hers is to die, and his is to kill her. What better way to end it than going all out in one final battle? The ultimate test of Snake's skill and the training the boss has given him. She isn't just gonna let herself die, this battle will be the passing of the torch of her title. Whoever wins will earn the title of the boss and live a life of endless battle. Only once she's left behind a greater soldier than herself can she die happily. And just to make sure Snake gets his mission done quickly, she radios in for the area to be bombed by Russian fighters, which means the fight has a 10-minute time limit. This final fight against her is great as it serves as the culmination of everything you've learned throughout the game. It's a dynamic game of cat and mouse where either one of you can chase the other down or try to play keep away with them. She's incredibly agile and can close distance on you fast. They both developed close quarters combat together, and now that plays a major role in the fight. She'll dash towards you and initiate a CQC takedown, but with the right timing you can counter her and take her down instead. She's armed with her machine gun, the Patriot, which can fire so fast that it deflects your bullets. There's an element of stealth to this fight too, and the setting of a flowery field is perfect for popping out to catch her off guard. The boss's outfit blends in really well with the environment, making her hard to keep track of even when she's running straight at you. I like how her design reflects the pure nature of her motivations, and I also like the duality between her and Snake if you're wearing his sneaking suit. Because we know what Snake becomes later on in his life, we can see the foreshadowing expressed through this outfit. He's this dark figure contrasting the boss and this entire situation. It's a pretty simple fight mechanically, but it's very rich thematically, and the first time you play it, you'll have tons of conflicting thoughts and emotions racing through you. I especially like that during this fight you can find 3 different snakes, each named after the 3 clones of Big Boss. Solid, Liquid, and Solidus, who are all birthed by this inciting incident. The fight gets really exciting once its time limit begins to run out and the game's main theme, Snake Eater, begins to play. Up to that point it was a quiet and somber battle, but once this kicks in you really get into it, especially since you know this means it's almost game over. In the end, Snake defeats her, and now that she knows she's been surpassed, she can accept her death. After a long moment of reflection and hesitation, Snake shoots her with her own gun, ending her life for good. This moment of pain and release is punctuated by an incredible display, with the entire field of white grass lilies turning blood red and the snake-shaped scar on the boss's chest coming to life and slithering off. She's finally free, completing her greatest and final mission. She left a greater soldier behind in her wake, and her death avoids an escalated conflict between the US and Russia caused by Volgin firing a US-made nuke on Russian land. Behind closed doors, her death also means the successful acquisition of the legacy and the unification of the different sects of the philosophers, meaning the end of the Cold War. At least that's what she died believing. In reality, obtaining the legacy didn't unify the philosophers. Instead, the different sects just continued to backstab each other to get it for themselves. Eva, who was an ally of Snake's throughout the entire game, claiming to be a US spy undercover in Russia, reveals that she was actually a spy for the Chinese sect of the philosophers. Her mission was to obtain the legacy herself and bring it to the Chinese, as well as eliminate anyone involved. Except she couldn't go through with killing Snake because she made an agreement with the boss before her passing. When Eva was a child, she grew up in a charm school set up by the philosophers where she was molded into the perfect spy for the organization's uses. One of her instructors there was the boss, and they both remembered each other and saw through one another's disguises the whole time. The boss was forbidden from explaining her reasoning for defecting to Snake, but she told them to Eva and made her agree to let him live and explain her motivations to him after her death. Eva steals the legacy for China after she makes a tape explaining everything to him. Now he knows why she died and why he had to kill her, so that a corrupt and scheming organization could save its own skin after its plan went wrong the first time. They were both used so that this group could get back its money and come together to thrive again as the world's true power, influencing and proliferating war across the globe for gain. But not even that actually happened, which would have at least resulted in an end to the Cold War and the group's infighting. Even when we thought the legacy was stolen by Eva and taken exclusively for the Chinese philosophers, it's revealed that the copy of the legacy she obtained was actually a fake. This is explained by Ocelot at the end of the game, who was an actual American spy undercover in Russia. In reality, the US philosophers were still able to obtain one half of the legacy and assume the Russian branch was able to get the other. As a result of this, the philosophers never reunited, and the Cold War lasted for another 30 years before we can only assume the entity known as the Patriots came into being. Both Snake and the boss were taken advantage of for their skill, good nature, and naivety. And now he's forced to meet face to face with the people who probably had something to do with planning the operation. And not only that, but they're all congratulating him for his great deed. He killed the most important person in the world to him, and now he's being rewarded with the title of Big Boss as if defeating her was some kind of glorious achievement to be proud of. By saluting the president but refusing to shake his hand or anyone else's unless forced to, is him saying that you have my loyalty as a soldier, but not as a person. The boss went down in official history as a war criminal despised by both the Americans and Russians. Future generations remember her as a traitor who betrayed her own country and brought nuclear destruction to Russian territory. She sacrificed her life and her legacy for her country, hoping that the world would become one again. She was the tool the philosophers needed, and they used her to her purpose. She was that selfless and loyal to her country, but Big Boss was loyal to her, and this whole event and sense of betrayal became the permanent fissure between him and the governments of the world. This is when he truly became the Big Boss we know from the first two Metal Gears. He grew more and more bitter over the course of the next 31 years to the point where he eventually tried to start an uprising against the rest of the world, establishing his own sanctuary to get away from them called Outer Heaven, where soldiers aren't just pawns to manipulate. But that's a story for another time. The boss is a character who left an incredible impact on a lot of players. She was a character we wanted to beat to prove ourselves, but were forced to kill for dirty reasons. We empathize with her desire for peace, and we feel the same impact Big Boss does by following our orders and ending her life. She was a character created to give more motivation to an already established villain, but her execution was great. They could have created some villain whose reasoning spoke to Big Boss so much that he was corrupted, or they could have even made him rotten from the beginning. But instead, they recontextualized his villainy in a great way by making it the byproduct of being forced to kill a legitimately good person. She wasn't the be-all end-all factor of the series' storyline. She, as well as this entire game, was a really clever way of connecting the era of Big Boss with the era of Solid Snake and making their worlds feel more cohesive, but not bleeding them into one another and making things convoluted by changing much of what we already knew. The boss informed Big Boss and the philosophers informed the Patriots. To sum things up, the boss was a force to be reckoned with, and her presence can be felt not only by the tension in every scene she appeared in, but the ripples sent across the entire series by the gunshot that killed her. By accepting her own death, she stopped the unintentional escalation of the Cold War, which could have resulted in an all-out nuclear apocalypse. And for that, she was buried under a nameless gravestone that read, "In memory of a patriot who saved the world," in acknowledgement of her sacrifice by those involved. Knowledge they'll take to the grave with them when they eventually pass too.
Son, you've got a way to fall. They'll tell you where to go, but they won't